Hey lady friends, welcome to Become a Podcast Queen. Are you a coach, a consultant, a network marketer, a thought leader, an entrepreneur, a keynote or public speaker, or a creative type? Perhaps you're a hobby podcaster or have a podcast of your own for your business. If so, then you're in the right place. This is a podcast for the heart-centered and bold, badass woman who wants to find, use, and amplify her own unique voice to become an absolute powerhouse in her own podcast. If you're ready to pour your passion and purpose into your very own podcast and have a positive impact and influence in the world while making an income at the same time, then please join me in these empowering conversations. Learn all of my secrets around getting your podcast up and off the ground, speaking your dreams into existence, marketing and promoting your podcast, elevating your brand awareness, growing your downloads and listenership while attracting paying clients and paying customers through the power of podcasting. My name is Olivia Powell, your hostess with the mostest. I'm an international podcast and business coach and a mentor to female entrepreneurs. Tune in each episode for tons of helpful insights, actionable steps to implement straight into your own podcast so that you can put your best work out there into the world. I am here to help you harness the power of podcasting to guide and inspire you to elegantly strap on those lady balls, grab the mic and press record. Are you ready to birth and build your podcast while becoming a queen at podcasting at the same time? We don't wait until we're ready. We unapologetically crown and anoint ourselves to deliver our message. Are you with me? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to today's episode. Now, I'll be real with you guys. I have been struggling to record this episode because it's going to be a little bit different in the way that this is not about podcasting necessarily. This is more of a social and a personal episode. And so basically what this is about is by the time that you actually hear this episode and it drops, it will be on my 30th birthday, right? On the 24th of September, 30 years ago, Miss Olivia Powell was born. And what I did was recently is I hopped on Instagram and I asked, hey, would you guys like to hear about my journey around, wrapping my head around turning 30 and what this means and what I've learned from my 20s, what I want to bring into my 30s? Because I feel like aging is such an issue, especially in Western society, Western culture. And aging is really, from what I can gather from like the media and the messages that we're portrayed, is kind of like a negative thing, right? It's got negative connotations. No one wants to get old and wrinkly and incapacitated and all this sort of stuff. And every time that you hit, not every time, when you turn 18 and 21, you don't have this sense as much. But what I found is turning 30 or coming close to turning 30 in your late 20s, that's when things really start to creep in and you really start to go, wow, life is quick, life is short, and where does all the time go, right? So I thought I'm going to do an episode about this because I feel like it is an issue that a lot of women struggle with. And the last few years, I've actually seen this pop up on social media quite a lot in different Facebook groups where, certain women have gone, oh my God, I'm turning 30 soon. I can't believe it. I'm dreading it. I want to run away. I want to cry and hide under the covers and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, whoa, I totally get that. I can relate to that, but I also don't want to feel like that when I do turn 30. So this episode today is called 30 as fuck. Because I do feel 30 as fuck. And I also don't feel 30 as fuck. And what I mean by that is like, those people when you've been growing up and they say to you, I don't feel like I'm 55. I feel like I'm 21. You're like, yeah, righto. Okay, person that's, in a 50-something-year-old body. But as you approach 30 or you turn 30, maybe you're listening to this and you're in your early 30s, mid 30s, late 30s, maybe you're even in your 40s, I don't know. But when you get to this particular stage in life and onwards, you kind of get what they're saying. You're like, ooh, I know exactly what they're talking about, And so that's what I wanted to jump on and talk about today and share a little bit of my life with you guys and my own life lessons and my own journey. And you may or may not relate to some of this. So just keep an open mind. This is just purely from my perspective. Now, those sayings, 30, flirty and thriving and all this sort of stuff. It's so glamorized turning 30 and romanticized in a sense. And also it's not. And so I want to come to you with this episode around how I do feel like I'm 30, flirty and thriving, but then I also don't. I want to be super honest and raw with you guys because it's not like you wake up on your 30th birthday and you go, I'm 30, flirty and thriving. Life is fantastic. I'm the best I've ever been. Da, da, da. Sorry to burst your bubble, but that's probably not going to happen. But what I do want to say is, for me personally anyway, I do feel like I relate it to like a bottle of wine. It gets better with time. It gets better with quote unquote age, that, negative connotation word. And that's how I like to think of myself. And I think when you try that belief on, it feels a lot better than going, holy crap balls, I am 30, I'm halfway to 60, I'm virtually halfway in the grave. You know what I mean? Like it's not, firstly, it's not true. And secondly, that's not empowering. It doesn't feel good to have that belief system either. So this episode's kind of a little bit like a time capsule as well. That's how I'm kind of thinking of it to myself. It's like, when you see those weddings where they have like, a wooden box and they've put this love letter to each other or their future selves in this box and they open it later on. This is how I feel about this podcast episode. It's like documenting my life in a sense. So I sat here the last couple of months, actually. It's been on my mind. I'm like, I want to do an episode around, turning the big 30, turning dirty 30. But I was like, how do I condense everything into like a 15-minute episode or something? Like, how is that actually possible? When you think about all the time that you've lived through up until the age of, 3 decades, how do you squash that into 15 minutes? And I realized that was my perfectionism taking over, and you just can't. So this is just purely a snippet, a tiny, tiny little slither of, the big cake, if I guess the cake of life. I don't know, I just made that up. So yes, just keep that in mind as I talk through this. But in your late 20s, it's different too because, as a kid, time's very different. And even time in high school, the days feel really long and drawn out. You're like, oh my gosh, when will I ever finish high school? And before you know it, you've hit year 10, 11, and 12, and you're like, holy crap, the next chapter of my life is really starting. And you feel this massive momentum. You feel all these shifts and change. Everyone's focused on the future and what you're going to do at uni or TAFE or your career or where you're going to go or move. And there's just so much happening at that age. And what's really interesting is no one really prepares you for the fact that once all of that is done and people have, are doing their degrees or setting up their careers or having their families or traveling or whatever it is that they're doing, their gap years and stuff, you reach about mid-20s. And a lot of people start to settle down or have their life, quote unquote, set and laid out. They've got a path. They've chosen a path for the most part. And it makes you reflect on your own life path. And especially when you reach your late 20s, a lot of people are married with kids, might have had a few promotions. They've got their careers sorted for the most part. And once again, I say this as a generalization. Not everyone experiences this, but the majority, right? And it puts you in this place of reflection and you start to ponder things. You start to mull over things and you have musings. And it's like when you go to a wedding or a funeral or a 40th wedding anniversary or a baby shower, it's those big moments in life that actually get you to sit down and start reflecting on your own life. And I know for me, I've really been concerned about turning 30 for like the last, probably since the age of 27 is when it really started to hit me. I was like, oh my God, I'm technically late 20s now. Gosh, don't fast forward, Olivia. I'm late 20s now. Oh my goodness, 30 is right around the corner. And I used to really fear it. I used to be really worried and concerned about it. And I can proudly say as of September on my 29th birthday onwards, actually no, it was from when I went to UPW, Unleash the Power Within with Tony Robbins for the second time. That's when I started approaching age very, very differently. Because when you think about society's expectation on aging and life journeys and seasons and stuff, it's kind of like they start seeing it as like slowing down. Even in sports journals and health books and stuff, they say your body starts to go downhill from 30 onwards, which is not very encouraging at all, which is why footballers tend to be a lot younger when they have their careers. Anyway, we're getting off. This is a tangent. Getting back on track. So I think it kind of, in a sense, our society sets us up for failure when it comes to thinking about age. And we have all these things like you need Botox, you need this. We have all these subliminal messages saying that we're not good enough as we are and aging is bad. Whereas in other cultures, aging is actually about wisdom and being wise and having a lot of value to offer. But in Western society, it's just not viewed that way. And so naturally, without us even realizing, we tend to take on these belief systems ourselves as well. I think that thing that really changed for me was when I did turn 29 and I realized 30 is right around the corner and I didn't start to fear it anymore because I was looking up to these role models and these people that were really still having so much momentum and progress still in their lives at the age of 50, 60, and 70, right? And I learnt that from UPW. And I was like, whoa, my life is not even close to being over. I'm not even close to being old. And I'm not going to use that language or refer to myself as that, and we can fall into those patterns when we're around people that think that way and say those things, right? So it's really important to remember that. So just to paint a picture of where I'm at in my life right now for my future version of myself, Olivia, when I want to look back and listen to this episode or something like that. At the moment, as you guys know, I'm nearly 30, but I'm also single and I'm also childless apart from my fur baby. And there's this tool we use in the life coaching world called the Wheel of Life. And I sat down the other day and I wanted to actually examine all the different wheels of my life. And there's career and business, there's finance, there's family, health, fun and recreation, friends, personal development, and spiritual. So they're all the components that make up someone's life. And we use this tool in the coaching world with clients to help them kind of rate their satisfaction and their fulfillment in these different sections. And they call it a wheel because often there's certain sections that are more fulfilling than others. And we look at, okay, cool, would this wheel smoothly roll down the hill or down the road, or would it be really bumpy? And when it's bumpy, you know that something's a little bit off and there's some work that needs to be done in these areas. So I sat down, and the thing that really, and I'm just going to touch on these guys because I'm not going to go through every single one in depth because I do not have the time, and you probably don't want to hear it. Maybe you do, I don't know. But I think the thing that really sticks out for me is when I think about turning 30 or reaching this stage of life, the thing that really pops up for me is my physical body and my health. So I had no idea how much I took for granted in terms of and I'm pretty fit and healthy, but there are things that happen as you start to quote unquote age that kind of are little reminders and little flags where they go, wow, you're not 21, or wow, you're not 16, and for me, the first thing that actually happened with that was my varicose veins. So a lot of people actually have varicose veins, but they're not aware of it until it reaches the surface and you actually see it on the outside of your calf muscles. I'm pretty lucky in the way that they're quite deep, so they're quite hard to see on the outside. But being a healthcare professional, a nurse and a midwife, you're always on your feet all day long, sometimes for double shifts, right? And that can be really bad for your veins because of gravity. And I was having all this throbbing when I used to go to bed or even during the day. And I was like, why are my legs throbbing? This is really weird. And the temperature of my legs, from my knee down, was different to the rest of my body. It was actually an ex-boyfriend that pointed that out to me. So I got some Dopplers done, which is a scan, and I was diagnosed with varicose veins. And I was like, whoa, this is the first thing that's actually going quote unquote wrong with my body, right? Because I'd never had any of that before. And it started to make me reflect on other things that I've noticed the last few years as well. And that's I used to play a lot of basketball growing up. And I used to exercise a lot as well and be quite active and do dancing and all this sort of stuff. And to be honest with you, I never noticed my body being any different, if that makes sense. I felt good after exercising, but it was different. It was you didn't really wake up feeling sore or achy or having any stiffness in your body. But for me, what I'm experiencing at the moment is a little bit of that, And it's just kind of whoa, where did that come from? And I do feel different after I exercise or work out. One thing I have noticed is having I prick my eyebrows. I don't get them waxed or whatever like some other women do. I just tweezer them. And I've noticed the last few years, on occasion, I'd have a white eyebrow hair and I'm like, oh my God, what is that? And it kind of worry you a little bit. You're like, oh my goodness. Other things too, I was a bridesmaid in a wedding, maybe 2-3 years ago, and I had my first 2-day hangover. That's the first time I've ever had that, and it's been the last as well. And I could not believe it took me that long to recover from a hangover. And I don't drink that often, so maybe that's got something to do with it too. I don't know. But I was like, wow, the amount of time that it takes to recover the next day. I get what people say now where they're like, it's just not worth getting that drunk. And so I haven't, do you know what I mean? Not like that. Another thing I've noticed is a bit more blurry vision. So I don't wear glasses, but I probably need to get my eyes tested because I notice that things that I see far away now, answering the buzzers at work or certain signs or labels or stuff that are really far away, they're a bit blurry on the outside, which once again, not used to. Even little things like fine lines and wrinkles when you smile, things that were never there in your early to mid 20s or earlier than that, right? So it's little things like this that start to happen that you go, okay, this is interesting. And even losing weight, the things that you used to do when you were younger don't seem to have the exact same effect at this age. What used to work before doesn't work now for me, is what I've found. And it's just interesting how your metabolism changes. And what is even more interesting is when, it's so funny, I had a conversation with a friend about this recently, where she looked at a photo of her past self when she was in her early 20s and she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I took my body for granted. I used to think I was so fat and I had to get rid of this roll and couldn't have, I needed to get a thigh gap and all these sort of things. And she's like, I had no idea how smoking hot I was back then. I totally took my body for granted. And I can actually agree with her and I can see where she's coming from because I totally relate to that. I'm like, yeah, it's funny how we often take things for granted and don't appreciate what we have in that moment. And sometimes it does have to be a conscious effort. I've found that it has had to be for me. It's easy to access gratitude, I guess, when you're more intentional and conscious about how you decide to live your life and how you decide and choose your thoughts, which is super important. So I just thought I'd share that with you because if you relate to my story, you're kind of at the same or similar age as myself, or maybe you're further along and you can relate to what I'm talking about. It's the first warning signs that, wow, your body is not actually 18 anymore. You know what I mean? You are actually getting older. And it can be a little bit scary. I'm going to be honest, guys. It's not like I'm walking into my 30s going, fuck yeah, I'm the best I've ever been in every single way. Sometimes I do feel like that. But to be honest with you, not all day, every day, all the time, And this is just a part of life's journey. This is just part of the human experience. So I just wanted to share that with you if you are going through the same thing. It's okay. This is meant to happen. And it's actually a privilege to get to 30. And I trust and hope that I'll still say the same thing when I reach 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, maybe even 100. Maybe I'll be one of the lucky ones that make it to that age and get a letter from the Queen herself. So you might be thinking that, if you're a deep thinker like me, it's easy to go, are you overthinking this? But there's a saying that I really love, and it's by Socrates, and it's the unexamined life is not worth living. And so that's why I think it's so important that we do take stock of our lives and we do ask ourselves what we want for our next chapter, or what we even want now and what we're grateful for now, because that's what really brings happiness. That is truly what brings happiness. And I had a friend recently, and this is kind of what got this whole thing started. She said to me, she wants to start her own podcast, and she's like, I've had to sit down and really ask myself, who am I? Who am I? What do I want to bring to this podcast? What do I want to share with people? What's my stance on things? But who am I at my foundation, at my core? And I think the thing here to remember is, and something we don't realize when we're younger, is that we are always, 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 always going through identity shifts all the time, with all of life's lessons, all of life's challenges, trials and tribulations that get sent our way, different scenarios that hit us, that test us. It's always forming our identity, and our identity is always shifting. Think about it. Your identity was different when you were a preteen to when you were a teenager, to a late teenager, to a young adult, to an actual adult. And that's the thing. When you turn 30, it's like you're officially an adult now. Like there's no getting around it. You're officially 30, and things that were cute in your 20s may not be so cute in your 30s. You know what I'm saying? So I think the thing that I want to kind of talk about as well is like the people that I really respect, that I think have, I guess you'd say, aged beautifully, are people that I admire. So, I watch Grace and Frankie, and I love those two women in that show, especially Jane Fonda, and I forgot the other actress's name, but I love the fact that they're still doing cool stuff at their age. They're still showing up in like cool Netflix series. They're on Netflix, which is where a lot of younger people hang out and watch shows. They're connecting with their audiences. They're sharing, their character's story of being in that phase and that season of their life. And I love watching it. I'm nearly 30. Well, by the time this drops, I'll be actually 30. But I can actually appreciate that stage of their life. And I love those sort of people. Diane Keaton, I think she has aged gracefully and beautifully. Susan Sarandon, these cool actresses that I watched growing up, they're still setting an awesome standard, I think. Like they're embracing it and they're sharing their story. And I think that's really, really empowering. When I think about the other areas or wheel of life, I should say, I feel like with my career, I'm so thankful to my past self that I set myself up and I got those 3 degrees. I'm so glad that I didn't decide to take a gap year, because I know that for me, I would have taken a gap year and I probably would never have gone down the education route. But I'm so glad and thankful to my past self that I did the mature thing and did that, because it really set me up. In terms of business, like I feel like I'm on the right track. I'm not exactly where I want to be 100%, but I feel like I'm on the right track. And I think that's really important. Listen up, ladies. Boy, oh boy. Girl, oh girl, have I got something special coming your way. You know how you've been thinking about starting your own podcast and it seems like every man and his dog or woman and her cat have a flippin' podcast these days? Do you know how you've been considering, dreaming, visualizing about having your own podcast for literally like weeks, months, maybe even years now? You know how you have all these cool ideas swirling around in your noggin, but it seems too complicated, too much to organize, too many missing pieces to fit together, and you don't even know where to start. Trust me, I get it. I procrastinated my podcast for over 6 months. You know how you're feeling super intimidated by all of the technology and techie side of things? Or maybe you already have a podcast and you feel like you're just spinning your wheels. You feel like it's not getting anywhere. You're wondering if anyone is even listening to your podcast and it's taking up all your time. You're starting to think, maybe I should just give up. Maybe it's not worth it. If this is you, then please keep listening. Here is a news flash. Starting my podcast was honestly one of the best things I've ever done for myself, for others, and also my business. And guess what? Now is the best time to start your podcast, because when are you going to have more time to focus on creating, starting, and launching your podcast and in the midst of a pandemic, right? Probably never. Pandemics only hit once in a century. So I'm actually coming out with an 8-week online program, and I will be personally guiding and supporting you through every step of the way, so you can go from confusion to clarity all around the exact steps on how to launch your own podcast like a queen and not a grandma, to help your listeners fall in love at first listen. Now, to be honest with you, I didn't know what the heck I was doing when I launched my podcast at the very beginning. I didn't have any strategy. I didn't know exactly who I was talking to. There was all these missing pieces. But as a podcast coach and a midwife, I want to help birth your podcast to the world the right way, so it doesn't need resuscitating later. And I do this through my unique launch strategy that I'll be teaching you in this program. I want to help you to become crystal clear on exactly who you're speaking to. I want you to know exactly who your ideal listener avatar is, so you know exactly what to create for these people. You know exactly what to talk about to your loyal listeners. I'm going to teach you how to make money selling your products and services through your podcast as well, including where and how to promote and market your podcast to reach your ideal listeners so that you can get your podcast into more ears, hearts, and minds to increase your downloads, as well as major platforms including iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and more. I'm going to teach you how to collaborate and interview high-profile and celebrity guests and be interviewed by other podcasts as well, so you can sharpen up your public speaking skills and tap into new audiences to grow your listenership. This program will be covering all the software and techie stuff, and I want to take that overwhelm away from you so you don't have to spend hours upon hours researching, Googling, YouTubing like I had to do. Because the fact of the matter is that you don't have to do everything yourself. Podcasting is meant to be done with ease and flow. It's meant to be fun. So let's work smarter and not harder. I'm also going to help you develop a personal brand for your podcast so that it feels aligned with who you are and also your business. So I want to personally invite you to, drumroll please, Podcast Launch Queens, where you will receive high-touch access with me as your coach through my live online program, weekly virtual classes with like-minded participants, exclusive access to a private Facebook group of supportive and uplifting women podcasters who are on the same journey as yourself. And that's right, I've already had some sign-ups and I haven't even officially announced the program until now. This program is also going to include bonus Q&A lives by yours truly. So in order to ensure each of my program signups receive enough high-level attention from me, I am only going to be offering this program to 10 women maximum. The doors for enrollment are officially open as of now, and they will be closing on midnight the 4th of October 2020. To be completely transparent with you, this is a beta program, so I don't know if I'll be running this program again. So if this has piqued your interest and it's feeling aligned for you, feel free to DM me to inquire and snag your spot before this hot program gets sold out like hotcakes. Financially, so much better than what I was in my 20s, it's funny when you reflect on your 20s compared to now. With my family, I'm so grateful for them. They're all happy, healthy, alive. It makes me start thinking about starting my own family, but being single, that's not a huge priority right now. But, in the next decade, that's something that I want to look at potentially. And to be quite honest with you guys, from the age of 15 onwards, I was hell-bent on being a mother. That was one of my biggest life aspirations. I knew I wanted kids desperately. And then after my engagement ended, it's like my motherly nurturing instinct of that deep aching of wanting to be a mum and having kids, it just kind of went away. And I've kind of wondered where it's gone the last few years. Maybe it's because it's not the right time for me. Maybe it's not the right priority, but it's really interesting because that was always a part of my identity, being that nurturing, loving mother type of person. I knew that I'd be an awesome wife and awesome mum. And one of the things that gets highlighted too, as you have a bit of life experience is life does not go according to plan. And I laugh at my old self being, in my 20s, in my teens, I used to think I could just map my life out. I'd be married by 21, I'd pop out 3 kids by the time I'm 30, I'd be all finished with my family, I'd have the white picket fence, the dog, the cat, the career, I'd have it all, and it would happen exactly on my timeline when I wanted it to happen. I was so naive to think that I had the control over that, to a degree, yes, but really, you can't decide when you're going to meet the love of your life and if they're going to stay in your life and you're going to grow together in the same direction. You don't know if you're going to, have any fertility issues or whatever, right? There's so much that goes into it that my former self just had no idea about. I just thought I could map it out because I was a little misorganized, little miss anal type A personality. It's life taught you something different there, Liv. Anyway, so yes. So I think when I think about what I'd like to leave behind for my 20s, I actually read an affirmation recently that really resonated with me, and I'll read it to you. I am no longer available for people, thoughts, or situations that do not support my best self. So I think in your 20s, it's really easy to settle for things or accept things that, because you don't know any better, right? So your 20s really can be for your lessons. And this is where I wish I could remember Carrie Bradshaw's quote from Sex and the City. I remember it was in one of the movies. She was sitting there with the singer. Oh gosh, I forgot her name, but basically Carrie was telling her personal assistant that your 20s are for the lessons, your 30s are for the fun or something. I can't quite remember. And then your 40s are for paying for the drinks or something like that. But when she said that your 20s are for your lessons, when I heard that in my 20s, I didn't really get it, but now I do. And I just know that myself in my 20s, I've settled for things, toxic relationships, things that were unaligned, friendships that weren't right or good for me. And I don't want to bring that into my 30s, I don't want to settle. And I have realized, and I've known this for a while actually, that I would rather be happily single than in a relationship that isn't right for me, because choosing a relationship is huge. Choosing the right relationship is huge. I've also learned that I don't want to wait for someday. Someday I'll do this, someday I'll do that. I've been saying for the last 2 years that I want to get back into salsa dancing, because I used to do that in my early 20s. I used to absolutely love it. It was social, it was fun, you'd meet new people, it was great, and it ticked so many boxes. And for some reason that phased out, and I just haven't gone back. And I've always said someday I'll do that. But in my 30th year, I want to start that up again. And I've got a friend that's coming with me, which is really cool. And I think with this whole coronavirus circumstance, that's what I think it's really taught me, is that you can't wait for someday. The amount of time that it took me to work up the courage to decide to move to Bali with my business, which, by the way, if you've listened to my previous episodes, you'll know that fell through because of COVID. If I had actually done that, then I would have actually, and sooner, I would have had a few months over there and experienced being a digital nomad. But I waited. I waited for this thing to happen. I waited for that thing to happen. I waited for someday. And I think that's a big thing that I'm taking away from this situation, is that you just can't wait for someday, because someday passes. And then you're like, crap, I should have done that years ago. Yeah? Can you relate to what I'm talking about? The thing that I want to leave back in my 20s as well, or behind in my 20s, is taking things for granted and being unintentional. I think I'm a pretty intentional person and quite mindful, but there's still some room for improvement there. So let me share with you my birthday wish for the next 1 year, the next 10 years, maybe until my 40th birthday, who knows? But these are some of my intentions. These are some of my objectives. And if you relate to these, feel free to share them with me on Instagram. Reach out to me, send me a DM and go, hey, I listened to this episode. I so agree with that. I want to do salsa dancing too, or whatever it is that I'm about to say, or even a Facebook message. So a big intention I've got is I want to experience more childlike joy. So, when you're in your 20s, and this has been my journey, not everyone, experiences this, of course. A lot of people party a lot in their 20s and have a lot of joy. I've had joy, but I've also been very serious. I've taken the career path and studied my butt off, been very responsible and mature. And, I think I was kind of a bit of an old soul, so I never did a lot of stupid stuff, right? Which is fine. I don't want to do that stuff. But I think what can happen is we get so used to growing up and, having these roles of being adults and, having all these responsibilities, we forget to have that childlike joy and do those things that bring back that childlike joy, because we all have an inner child. If you're a coach or you've been in personal development, you know what I mean by that. We all have that inner child, and people that are in personal development will know about the inner child work that has to be done as well to access that. So I think as adults, we can forget to have fun, we just forget to do it. And I think it's important to bring more of that back and make ourselves happier and make other people around us happier as well. The other thing too is I want to be focusing more on experiences than materialistic items. So I want to seek more fun experiences and life experiences, travel more when the borders open, of course, and explore more of the wider world around me. I've only been to 2 other countries. I've been to Bali and I've been to New Caledonia, and they're both fantastic, but I want to go to more places while I'm here. I think it'd be great. Definitely want to start salsa dancing or hip hop lessons again. I would love to go to more in-person events and concerts. I'd love to see Taylor Swift live and Selena Gomez. That is definitely on my bucket list. I also want to continue working on myself, working towards becoming the best version of myself and stepping into her more and setting myself up to live my best life, and I know we hear that saying being chucked around a lot, but I truly do mean it. I think it's a never-ending journey, and if you stop, then you stop. There's no more of that. But I think it's important to have that as a priority for everyone if you're that way inclined. Improving your mindset, appreciating each season that you're in, collecting and relishing in the lessons that come with each phase and stage of life, stepping into more being authentic and unapologetically yourself, or myself, I should say, because this is about me, and you. But I think that's something that we really come into as we get older. Like as we enter our late 20s and early 30s, we are less concerned around people liking us. And like, that saying, when you walk into a room when you're younger, you look around and wonder who likes us. But when you're a little bit older, you walk into that room and you go, who do I like here? You know what I mean? Like you have that less of a need for people to have to like you to basically tell you that you're worth something. And it kind of switches. You flip the script a little bit and you go, who do I actually like? Who do I want to hang out with? Who do I want to invite into my world? I think that's a really big one. I also want to work on my business. I want to start elevating that and scaling and escalating that in a more beautiful way. I want to have some speaking opportunities and actually get on stages. I want to have a product line and develop digital programs. So I won't say too much about that because we'll see what happens. One thing that I'm really wanting is to have soul sister and like-minded friendships. So those sort of friendships where it's like that soul connection. It's not just like a friend that you catch up with for brunch every 6 months, but like the actual soul sister where you can talk on the phone, a little bit of time passes, nothing's changed, but you get each other. You know what I mean? Like you feel like family. I want more of that in my life. And I've narrowed it down to the trifecta. There's, how they talk about having like the ideal man list or the ideal partner list or whatever it is that you want as like, criteria or a bit of a guideline. I realized that when it comes to friendships, I've got a bit of a guideline which covers 3 things. And I've only recently discovered this too. So the first one is being able to have absolute thorough fun, like so much fun with this person or people, but also being able to trust them and they're super loyal and super trustworthy, but also have a growth mindset and have those really deep life conversations with. I find that when someone has got those 3 things, that to me is like a soul sister connection there. It's that soul connection. They're the 3 things that are really important to me in friendships, I've realized. So I want to welcome more of that into my life over the next decade and further. The other thing too is I'm putting this out into the universe, I'm open to welcoming my ideal partner into my life. Or, how they say you go find love. I think to a degree, yes, but also love finds you. Like I'm open to that and receiving that into my life. I feel like I'm ready. It's been a few years now. I've done all my healing, my recovery. I know what path I'm on and I'm open to that. So I'm excited for that next thing. I'm excited to fall in love again. That whole sweet, like beautiful, like feeling. It's hard to explain and put into words, but if you've ever been in love, you'll know what I'm talking about. Something funny as well is I'm actually, and this is something that's recently happened too, a lot of recents, I want to get rid of my old janky jewelry. Like in your 20s, you go to Lovisa, Colette, anywhere that has like cheap jewelry that's sparkly and you buy a lot of it, you know what I mean, to go with the outfits. I feel like less inclined to buy that stuff now and actually buying the real thing. And I'm really into rose gold at the moment. Like I would rather spend more money on something that's quality than like less money on something that's crappy, if that makes sense. Like I'd rather spend $150 on a good pair of jeans that's going to last me years and years and years than spend $10 or $20 on multiple pairs of jeans that's going to fall apart in a year. You know what I mean? Like I really am looking at that quality over quantity sort of thing in life as well. So anyway, I've been rambling on enough here. So what I wanted to do was share 30 of my life lessons that I've learned, that I've condensed down. And as I said, some of these might resonate with you, some of them might not. So whichever one it is, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know that I'm not the only one that's gone through this, guys. So the first one is, my education is never complete. I'm a lifelong learner. Number 2, every single year surprises me with what unfolds and I go deeper into myself and my identity. I'm always learning something new with each layer of who I am and myself. The third lesson is people come and go. People come into my life, they go out of my life. People come and go for either a reason, a season, or a lesson. Number 4, comparisonitis is the thief of joy, but it can also be a great motivation, a great source of motivation and inspiration. And I'm a big believer in the fact that the grass is greener where you water it. Social media these days paints such a beautiful picture. It's like the highlight reel, and it's very easy to sit there and go, oh, that person's sitting under a tropical tree and, having a massage and drinking from a coconut. And here I am doing this, whatever it might be. You can't help but compare sometimes. And it's really normal. But what can tend to happen is it steals that joy from us, because we're comparing our lives. And we don't need to do that because we have our own lane, we have our own lives, and we're doing what we're meant to be doing. Number 5 is you can only plan so much. Like I touched on before, Life will come at you with things that surprise you, and it can crush your perception of control. We only have so much control, yeah? I choose to believe that life is always working for me, not against me or to me. And each year there's always a new surprise that teaches me something new about myself. Like, I never thought that I would have gone vegan a few years ago, and now I'm veggie. Never would have thought about it. It was never on my radar, right? That's just one little thing. I know when I got my belly button pierced years and years and years ago, that was never something I ever wanted to do, and then I did it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just all these surprises can unfold and unravel in ways you'd never expect. Number 6, my body has changed from my 20s, and I'm learning to love every step of the way and what my body is going through. Number 7, what I've actually learned is that most people have a light and a dark side. They call it light and they call it shadow, your shadow self, which is, once again, relatively new to me since I've entered the coaching world a few years ago. I never knew about this. And I just find it really fascinating, but I choose to focus on the light in people. Number 8, finding more happiness and contentment and identity within myself rather than trying to find happiness in someone else. Number 9, life and happiness is a journey. It is not a destination. It is so important to smell the roses along the way and not be the victim of the I'll be happy when syndrome, or just focusing on the outcome and working your ass to get there and then reaching it and not being happy, right? So the journey is everything. Number 10, each experience is one stepping stone to the next. Everything does happen for a reason, even if I don't see it in the moment. It all links up in hindsight, like stepping stones or, connecting the dots. Number 11, momentum and progress make humans happy. Number 12, what fulfills me personally looks different for someone else, and that's okay. Number 13, society's expectations and following the masses is not always a good compass for what is right for me. Sometimes swimming against the tide is the hard thing to do, but it's the right thing. Number 14, first impressions aren't always accurate. Number 15, love at first sight. I believe love at first sight is actually bullshit. Sorry if I've crushed anyone's soul there, but I don't believe in love at first sight. I used to when I was younger. I also don't believe that love conquers all, because I've been in situations before where I've loved that person and love has not conquered. I think there's more to it. I think it's about compatibility. I think it's about whether you're a good fit, whether your values and your goals align, and so much more. But that's a whole nother episode. Number 16, it's always better to be slow to respond than be quick to react to people that trigger you or circumstances that trigger you. Number 17, there's always going to be fear, but it doesn't mean I shouldn't do something. It just means that I care. Number 18, beliefs can either serve us or hold us back. Beliefs are moldable, and rigid rules can keep us small and safe. Number 19, there is always, always, always something to be grateful for. Whether it's running hot water, pajamas to wear, a nice warm bed, a nice hot cup of coffee, the sunshine on your back, a warm breeze, whatever. Number 20, emotions are temporary, and it's a good skill to be able to flick through emotions quickly like children do. Number 21, failure is just feedback. You never fail or lose unless you give up and stop trying on something that you love and is meant to be. 22, there's always someone out there who loves you, even in moments when you don't feel loved. 23, people pleasing ultimately won't make you happy, even if I try to, convince myself that it will. It doesn't, and it hasn't. And it's something that, to be quite honest with you, I'm still working on even now. 24, we are the artists of our own life. We design and shape our reality and our destiny. Number 25, everything works out for me, even in those moments where it feels impossible, highly unlikely, or I'm doomed. Somehow I'm always okay, and I always land on my feet like a cat. It's uncanny. 26, give people the benefit of the doubt, because sometimes you can be wrong. Sometimes, assumptions can be wrong. Yeah, so give them the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes people don't always present their best self or act as their best self, or their behavior is not always on point. And sometimes there's a reason for that, and we don't always have to understand it, but sometimes giving them the benefit of the doubt is a good thing to do. I know I would appreciate that when I don't show up as my best self. 27, our stories are powerful to others. I cannot stress that one enough. I just did a Facebook Live on this in my group last night, Facebook group, Become a Podcast Queen, the community, and other groups too. You have no idea how powerful your story can be to someone else. So make sure you share it. 28, a all or nothing mentality robs me. So what I mean by that is, and I see this a lot in society, and I think it's actually a coaching thing that I've learned about, that whole mentality of like, I've either got to be 100% perfect at this and eat all the right things and go to the gym every day of the week and da-da-da-da-da, or I screwed up and I'm not going to do anything and I'm just going to blob on the couch all day and eat crap. Like that's a good example of an all or nothing mentality. If you apply it to business or podcasting, it's like I did that one podcast and no one listened. And so, I gave it my all and then nothing happened. So I'm not going to bother anymore. I'm going to give up and get discouraged, right? That's an all or nothing mentality and it robs you because it's something that doesn't actually serve you ultimately. 29, second last one, guys. We are so much more interconnected than what we realize we are, and life really is about people and humans. It's not about stuff. It's not about problems that we're not going to be worrying about in 5 years. You know what I mean? Like it really does come down to humans and our connections. It's so intricately, I kind of think of it as like a tapestry, like we're all woven in together, as a collective, as a whole. I could go into more of that. I'm not going to. Number 30, perfectionism isn't real. It's boring and it's unobtainable. Those moments in my life where I've tried to be perfect has really held me back. It's stumped me. It's kept me stuck. It's made me not do things that I know that would benefit me. And even this episode, right? Like I honestly was like, I have to record this episode or I will not get this episode done by my birthday. And then I've missed the boat. And I was like, but I don't have all this time to sit down and actually like perfect the episode and say things exactly right. Or maybe I've missed something. Like, so be it. Do you know what I mean? At least it's done. Done is better than perfect, right? That's one of my biggest favorite quotes. Done is better than perfect. So having that expectation of things being perfect can really rob you of, it's that comparisonitis, and perfectionism is the thief of joy. So anyway, I think I'll leave it there, guys. But what I would just want to kind of let you know is, and just remember this, wherever you are in your life, whether you're satisfied with it, whether you're not, whether you've got different areas of the wheel of life that you need to work on or you want to work on, you're not behind. You are exactly where you're meant to be in your life in this moment as I speak right now. Trust your greater life's plan. Trust that things are unfolding exactly how they're meant to be unfolding. Keep enjoying the journey. Keep smelling the roses and be grateful for where you are right now. Because it's true, I think, when they say that when you look back on your life, you'd feel nostalgic about a time that's passed or a moment that has passed. And what tends to happen, I think, is we get nostalgic when we haven't truly been like thoroughly joyful, but grateful for that moment and treasured it, and cherished it. So be grateful for where you are right now. And don't call yourself old, right? Because whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever it is, at some stage, you're going to get older and you'll look back to where you are right now in this moment and go, damn, I wish that I really appreciated where I was and that age because it was so freaking good. Yeah. So I hope and trust that this episode has served you in some way about your own age and about your own life's journey. And I know this has got nothing to do with podcasting really, but I just felt like this was on my heart to share and I wanted to share it while it was the right time and I didn't miss the boat. So if this is you and you relate to this, welcome to your next chapter. I'm always with you by voice. I'm so happy that you've listened to this. And if you're new here, welcome. Feel free to listen to my other episodes and the ones that are coming. I love you guys. Thanks for listening. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and listening in. I truly, truly appreciate you and your listenership. I really do. And if you happen to love this episode, feel free to share it with someone to join my podcast quest of empowering more and more women to rise up, find and use their own voices to unlock a podcast of full self-expression, creativity and freedom. I can't wait for you to show up, share your story and serve others through your own podcast. And if you want help to achieve this and receive more personalized care, then feel free to email me at oliviapowercoaching@gmail.com to book a consult. Or you can join the conversation in my free Facebook group by searching Become a Podcast Queen Community. If you want to hang out on Instagram, search me at Olivia Power Coaching. See you in the next episode, Queens.